Part 11. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 101. Chapter 101 Soaking Soybeans, Third Update. It seems that even though there are many people selling braised pig offal in the town, everyone still knows that her braised pig offal tastes delicious after eating her braised pig offal. Some families with good conditions would rather spend a few more cents to buy food with good taste. Besides, she also gives away free braised soup. Other places generally don't give away free soup, and even the free soup is incomparable to her braised soup. She braised it with spices and seasonings, and the heat and flavor were well adjusted, so it naturally tastes different. Zhang Ziluo is confident about this. Zhang Ziluo smiled and explained, "I'm really busy these days, so I didn't take care of this. Since the business is good, let's continue to make braised pigs." Lin Zuzu immediately beamed. She was really worried that Zhang Ziluo would no longer be in the braised food business. She knows that Sister Zhang is a capable person, and maybe one day she will really look down on the braised food business. But it would be good to be able to do business for one more day. Not to mention that she would get a commission, but this braised food helped her attract a lot of customers. Even her butcher stall business is doing very well. You will naturally make more money. That's good, Sister Zhang. If you need anything from me, just ask me, don't be embarrassed. If you are busy, you can ask Brother Joe to help deliver it. I think he is reliable and trustworthy. Zhang Ziluo smiled and said, "The little brother you are talking about is Joseoxi. I had something to do that day, so I had to ask Joseoxi to help deliver it." Lin Zuzu nodded and said, "Well, no wonder you trusted him and asked him to deliver it. He is indeed very cheerful. If he hadn't explained it when he came to buy meat yesterday, I would have been worried that you would stop doing the braised food business." Lin Zuzu had a very good impression of Joseoxi. That young man was sunny and cheerful, and he didn't look at her with contempt. He was clean, which made her feel very comfortable. Zhang Ziluo nodded. Joseoxi could indeed be trusted. If it were anyone else, she wouldn't trust him so much, let alone hand over a bucket of prepared braised food to him. In the future, if the business is really too busy and she needs manpower, she might really consider using Joseoxi. But I'm still busy for the time being. I'm too busy to talk about it later. In addition to buying pigs for drinking water, I also bought some meat this time. Lin Zuzu said cheerfully, "It's easier to buy meat. Should I buy pork belly?" Lin Zuzu weighed Zhang Ziluo's meat very well, and the price was much cheaper than others. On weekdays, Zhang Ziluo buys a lot of pork belly, mainly for cooking at home. However, this time Zhang Ziluo will be used to make chili con carne sauce instead of pork belly. "Give me 1 pound of pork belly and 5 pounds of lean meat." Pork belly is still used for stir fry, and lean meat is better used for making chili meat sauce. At the beginning, she didn't make too much. She made a little to let her family taste it, and then sold it in the market to see how the market responded. If business is good and everyone likes to eat, she will make more batches. Now that I have limited money, I still need to build a house, so I can only plan carefully and start a small business first. Fortunately, the braised pig sesame business has been doing well because of its unique taste. I can make more than $1 or $2 silver every day, which can also relieve the pressure of building a house. Lin Zuzu cut a few more slices, and after Zhang Ziluo calculated how much it would cost to buy lean pork belly, she gave Lin Zuzu copper coins. She was going to take the things home, but thought she needed tempeh. But there is no one selling tempeh here, so she can only make it herself. "Sister Lin, let me put the pork into the water first and put it here for you. I'll come over and get it later." "Don't worry, you can come and get it anytime." Zhang Ziluo then went to the grain store to buy soybeans. Songji grain store closed down after an incident last time, and Zhang Ziluo went to another grain store. Soybeans cost 5 cents per caddy. Zhang Ziluo thought the price was okay, so she bought some more soybeans. After buying the things, Zhang Ziluo went to get the meat, carry the pig into the water and go home. As soon as she got home, Zhang Ziluo got busy. Ziluo, what is this? Mrs. Kui looked at the soybeans, peppers and meat that Zhang Ziluo bought with some doubts. Generally, if she is cooking and eating, Zhang Ziluo would not buy so many pounds of lean meat at once. Zhang Ziluo knew Mrs. Kui's doubts and explained, "Mom, I plan to make chili meat sauce and sell it. So I bought something and came back to try it out." Looking at Zhang Ziluo's calm and confident expression, Mrs. Kui understood that although Zhang Ziluo said she would give it a try, she knew what she was doing. Generally, Zhang Ziluo will be sure of whatever she wants to do. Mrs. Kui knew that Ziluo worked so hard for this family. Let her rest as much as possible, as her body is busy doing business. "I'll help you with whatever you need." Zhang Ziluo said, "Mom, the main thing is to make the tempeh first. Once it's done, you can make the chili meat sauce directly. We still need some peanuts. Peel the peanuts first and fry them for later use. Making chili con carne also requires some chopped peanuts." Mrs. Kui didn't know what tempeh was, but she didn't ask much. She just did whatever Zhang Ziluo said. Mrs. Kui quickly took out some peanuts at home and peeled them. Zhang Ziluo soaked some soybeans she bought. These soybeans should be soaked overnight before use. Mrs. Kui nodded and said, "Well, let's soak there." "Mom, I still need some mushrooms. It happened to rain. I'll go to the mountains to pick them." Actually, there were people selling mountain products at the market in the town, but Zhang Ziluo was reluctant to buy them. She thought it had rained, so there must be a lot of wild products on the mountain, so she might as well go to the mountain to pick some. "My family has picked mushrooms in the mountains before and made soup, which tasted very good. Save as much as you can." Upon hearing this, Mrs. Kui quickly put down her work and said, "The soil on the mountain is not dry yet, so walking is difficult. I'd better go to the mountain to pick some." Zhang Ziluo shook her head and said, "It's okay, Mom, I'll go take a look. I just want to see if there are any other ingredients. If there are medicinal materials, she can also identify them. If you can pick medicinal materials on the mountain, you don't need to go to the medical center to buy them." Zhang Ziluo persuaded Mrs. Kui and went to the mountain with a backpack on her back. It has been raining for 3 or 4 days, and the mountains and forests are still wet, and the ground under our feet is not dry. Where the soil is soft, a piece of it will sink if you step on it lightly. Fortunately, she was wearing woven straw sandals, so she didn't have to worry about mud getting on them. After walking for a while, Zhang Ziluo saw many mushrooms on the mountain, and some large fungus on some tree trunks. "It's pleasing to look at." Zhang Ziluo stepped forward and picked these mushrooms and fungus into the basket on her back. With so many mushrooms, you can not only make soup, but also make mushroom dumplings and mushroom dumplings. After so many days here, they have never made dumplings once. People in the village only make dumplings and eat them during the Chinese New Year and festivals. Picking mushrooms and fungus, and continuing to walk further into the mountains, Zhang Ziluo found a pepper tree on the edge of the cliff. Pepper tree. Seeing Sichuan peppercorns really surprised Zhang Ziluo. You must know that she had bought Sichuan peppercorns before when she was making braised pig meat. She also bought a small amount of Sichuan peppercorns in the town in the afternoon, which cost more than 100 yuan. Here, Sichuan peppercorns seem to be a type of spice, so they are expensive. End of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 102. Chapter 102 Surprise, First Update. Seeing the Xanthoxylum bungianum tree, Zhang Ziluo was extremely excited. It's just that this pepper tree is close to the edge of a cliff, so be careful when picking it. While leaning against the edge of the cliff, Zhang Ziluo couldn't help but think of the time when she was picking medicinal herbs that night. It was very dangerous at that time, but it was Kui Hejin who saved her regardless of her hand injury and carried her home on his back. Thinking of the way he took care of her in every possible way during these special days, hot lava surged in her heart, warming her heart. It would be a lie to say that I am not moved. Thinking of Kui Hejin, Zhang Ziluo felt even more powerful. She looked at the soles of her feet carefully and began to pick peppercorns. But after picking for a while, Zhang Ziluo's expression changed. She seemed to have thought of something. She looked up at the tree and sighed, if this tree can be dug into the space, will there always be pepper? Yes, that is what Zhang Ziluo had in mind at this moment. Now that the space has been upgraded and the land area is larger, it should be possible to transplant this tree. And the pepper tree is not big and does not take up much space in the space. Zhang Ziluo thinks that Sichuan pepper is really an important condiment. It is used when stewing pigs in water and when making chili meat sauce. If you keep spending money to buy it, the price will be very expensive. And there really aren't many Sichuan peppercorns here in the north. If the grocery stores are gone, it's not easy to buy them. So the more Zhang Ziluo thought about it, the more convenient it became to transplant the Xanthoxylum bungianum tree into the space. In this way, there is space for the spiritual energy of the land to nourish, and the pepper will continue to grow. She can use it for free. Fortunately, this tree is not big, so it is easy to transplant. Zhang Ziluo did as she was told and took out the tools to dig out the tree roots. After working for a long time, the roots of the tree were exposed. Zhang Ziluo breathed a sigh of relief and tried to pull out the tree, but she didn't have enough strength at all. With a look on her face, she condensed the wood type abilities she had accumulated during this period. Then he used the wood ability to control the tree roots, pulling them out of the ground and transplanting them into the space. Zhang Ziluo followed into the space and used her powers to control the pepper trees planted next to the Lingquan pool. In the space field, she planted half an acre of chili peppers, and there was also a small piece of land where she kept some leeks to keep the leek seeds. However, I also planted some new leeks. Once they grow, I can keep them for my own consumption. Zhang Ziluo felt a little tired just now after using some wood powers. She sat by the pool and drank some spiritual spring water, which restored her physical strength. After coming out of the space, Zhang Ziluo continued to pick mushrooms. Whatever couldn't fit in the backpack, she put in the empty space. With these mushrooms, you don't need to buy them when making chili con carne. If you have chicken, you can make chicken stew with mushrooms and eat it at night. Thinking about the mushroom stewed chicken, Zhang Ziluo felt a little hungry. Although the family has recently started a small business and their family conditions are better, they do not dare to be extravagant and wasteful. In fact, Mrs. Kui and Kui Hejin need to drink medicine to maintain their health. They haven't built a house yet, so there is a lot of money to spend. So she usually only buys a pound or two of meat, and puts it in when cooking, which makes it smell fishy. Otherwise, I just buy some ribs occasionally and make rib soup. 1 pound of pork ribs can be stewed for several meals. It costs dozens of pennies to buy a chicken for eating. I have 2 big old hens at home for laying eggs. Some chicks were hatched before, but they are still too young to catch and eat. Zhang Ziluo wandered around for a while but didn't find anything. Seeing that it was getting late, I was ready to go home. Unexpectedly, I actually found a pheasant on the way home. The pheasant is eating in the grass. The grass in the grass is relatively tall, and it would be difficult for Ziluo Zhang to be spotted if her long feather tail wasn't trailing behind. Zhang Ziluo's expression changed, she approached quietly, then took out a silver needle and stabbed the pheasant directly. The pheasant was very alert, sensing something, and flapped its wings to fly, but Zhang Ziluo's silver needle was faster and stabbed the pheasant directly. It struggled a few times and fell to the ground. Zhang Ziluo hurried over, grabbed the pheasant, and tied its feet with the rope so that it was easier to carry. When she was about to get up, she suddenly saw the red snow in the grass. Red in the snow. Zhang Ziluo was very surprised when she saw Shuelihong. I didn't expect that there would be Shuelihong here, so I can make prunes. Zhang Ziluo remembers that both Shuelihong and mustard greens can be used to make prunes. You can make many delicacies with pickled vegetables, such as pickled pork with pickled vegetables, and can also be used to make pickled vegetables. Speaking of the plum and vegetable pot helmets, Zhang Ziluo looked excited. We can continue to set up a stall to make pots with various fillings. Kuakui is not easy to imitate. Zhang Ziluo hurriedly picked a lot of Shuelihong and planted some in the space. After finishing her work, she put the red mushrooms and other things in the snow in the space, put the pheasants in the empty basket, and carried the basket home. When we went down the mountain, it was just in the evening. The sun was setting in the west, and the afterglow of the setting sun shone on the village, giving the whole village a moving halo. Zhang Ziluo also saw the land behind the village from a distance, where so many people were busy building houses. The foundation is being laid, and the surrounding area is surrounded by a circle. Thinking that the house will be built soon and that she can live in a big house, Zhang Ziluo walks much more briskly. When Zhang Ziluo returned home, Kui Hejin had already returned. Ms. Kui breathed a sigh of relief when she saw her coming back. It's good that she's back. If it's a little later, Hejin will go to the mountain to look for you. Ms. Kui also just came back from the village and gave the copper coins to Li Zheng. After everyone finished their work, they settled their wages directly. Zhang Ziluo raised her head and looked at Kui Hejin, who came out of the house. For some reason, she felt a little guilty. Because she promised him that she would have a good rest at home. Zhang Ziluo was concerned about Kui Hejin's thoughts, so she felt a little guilty. She couldn't bear to make him worry and unhappy. Kui Hejin came to her, looked at her carefully, and made sure she was okay. Then he breathed a sigh of relief, but still asked uneasily, "Are you injured?" "No, I just walked around the outside of the mountain and picked some mushrooms. I also caught a pheasant." Speaking, Zhang Ziluo put down her backpack as if she was offering a treasure, and took out a pheasant and a bunch of mushrooms and pickled vegetables. Ms. Kui is cleaning the table and stove at home. Ms. Kui loves cleanliness very much. She cleans and wipes the inside and outside of her home 2 or 3 times every day. So although the fenced courtyard is relatively small and the rooms are small, the home is clean and comfortable to live in. Ms. Kui put down her work and ran to the yard. Looking at the pheasants and mushrooms, she became excited. Ziluo is still amazing. Pheasants are hard to find and hard to catch. You must know that the villagers often go to the foot of the mountain from time to time, but they can't find a pheasant after so many times. The pheasants that were there earlier were caught by the villagers. There is not even a pheasant feather now. Zhang Ziluo said sheepishly, "I just happened to find it." "Hey, what kind of dish is this?" Ms. Kui looked at Shuelihong, but she didn't recognize her and felt a little strange. But she knew that Ziluo would not bring some vegetables back for no reason. Could it be that they were edible like leeks? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Space Doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Candy. Chapter 103. Chapter 103 Fragrance, Second Update. When she thought of this, Ms. Kui became excited. Now when she looks at green vegetables that she doesn't recognize, she doesn't think of them as grass. And this dish looks completely different from grass. Zhang Ziluo smiled and explained, "Mom, this is Shuelihong. It is an edible dish. The taste of this dish is very different from other dishes. You can mainly use the method of 3 steaming and 3 drying to make prunes. I'm thinking that we can set up a stall to make pickled vegetables, mushrooms, fresh meat and other foods. Kiwakui is not easy to be imitated. Originally, she thought that after making plum pickles, they could also be used to make pickle pancakes. But this method is similar to making pies, there is nothing new. If you want business to be booming, you still have to be different from other pies. The kiwakui is just fine. It's crispy, sweet, and with the flavors of various fillings, I'm sure many people will like it. Mrs. Kui felt sour in her heart. You kid, you can't rest when I ask you to. All you think about is business. Mrs. Kui feels that this child has paid too much for this family and is so honest. Zhang's Hiluo smiled with crooked eyebrows. With more money, she could buy precious medicinal materials and completely cure Kui Hejin's body. In the last life, he would rather bear the infamy and risk his life to protect her. In this life, she will treat him well. Mom, I feel it's very meaningful to do this and I'm not tired. She was in a good mood, especially when she caught pheasants and found pickles. If you feel that you have gained something this day, you will feel fulfilled. Besides, Mrs. Kui and Kui Hejin have taken good care of her in the past 4 days, and she is in good health. She is not tired or cold. The water used for washing is all warm water, so after the body recovers, you will immediately have strength and your spirit will recover immediately. Kui Hejin looked at Zhang's Hiluo with a look of love and care in his eyebrows. Zhang's Hiluo didn't pay attention to this. She looked at the pickles, and her mind was filled with pickles and kiwakui, which looked like the food stall was booming. Thinking about these things gave her strength. Mrs. Kui rolled her sleeves up again and said, Hiluo, tell me what you want to do later, and I'll do it for you. And this pheasant, why don't we stew it tonight to replenish your health? Zhang's Hiluo nodded and said, well, there happen to be mushrooms and pheasants. I'm also thinking that we can make mushroom stewed chicken tonight. Zhang's Hiluo felt that her health was fine, mainly because she thought that drinking pheasant and mushroom soup would be good for Mrs. Kui and Kui Hejin's health. Mrs. Kui hasn't eaten stewed chicken for a long time. Thinking of the smell of mushroom stewed chicken, she can't help but feel hungry. Just as the hot water is boiling in the pot, my mother will take care of the chicken. Zhang's Hiluo took a bowl and put a little salt in the bowl. This way the chicken blood can coagulate. She said, Mom, let the chicken blood out first. The chicken blood can also be used for cooking or making soup. Mrs. Kui has never killed chickens to do this before. But Mrs. Kui knew that her daughter-in-law knew more, so she did exactly what her daughter-in-law said. Kui Hejin was worried that Zhang's Hiluo would be scared, so he walked over and said, I'll do it. Kui Hejin said, took a knife and cut the chicken's neck very neatly. Just like the after-image of the knife flashed by, it was fine. Zhang's Hiluo almost came to her senses. Seeing the chicken blood flowing out, she quickly picked up a bowl to catch it. After processing the chicken blood, Mrs. Kui began to scald the chicken feathers with hot water, pluck the chicken feathers and start processing the chicken. Zhang's Hiluo began to wash away the red in the snow. Wash the swilihong thoroughly and dry it in the yard first. The snow was a little red after washing, and more than half of the water in the water tank was used up at once. Kui Hejin watched, then silently carried a bucket on a pole to fetch water from the village well. After Zhang's Hiluo washed the swilihong, she started washing the mushrooms. After washing the mushrooms, wash the onion, ginger, star anise, pepper, red dates and other condiments. The onion and have been cut in advance. After getting everything ready, she looked at Mrs. Kui who had not yet finished handling the chicken. She took out a small piece of old noodles from the cupboard to make dough. She scooped out a large basin of noodles and started kneading the dough to make it rise. Watch it like this overnight, and you can get up early tomorrow morning to make kiwakui. Can be used to make kiwakui stuffed with mushrooms and meat. After kneading the dough, cover the pot with a lid to let the dough rise. At this moment, Mrs. Kui has also finished processing the chicken. Mrs. Kui is going to throw away all the chicken feathers. Zhang Ziluo hurriedly said, "Mom, the chicken feathers are still useful after being washed and dried. What's the use? Can it be used to start a fire?" Zhang Ziluo patiently explained, "Mom, chicken feathers can be used to make mattresses. It's very warm when the weather is cold." Zhang Ziluo had told her parents at home before, but she forgot to mention it to Mrs. Kui as well. Although Mrs. Kui was confused, she believed Ziluo's words, so she didn't throw it away. She put it aside and thought about washing it up after eating. Then, she carried the prepared chicken into the house and cut the chicken into large pieces. After cutting it, she looked at Zhang Ziluo and asked, "Ziluo, can we just put it in the pot and add water to stew it?" Zhang Ziluo shook her head and said, "Mom, it tastes very ordinary when made like that. You need to blanch it first." Mrs. Kui still doesn't quite understand the meaning of boiling water. Zhang Ziluo said patiently, "Mom, add cold water to the pot first." "Good." Mrs. Kui took a ladle and scooped some water from the vat into the cauldron. Zhang Ziluo then put the cut chicken pieces in, then added the chopped green onions and slices, and added a little rice wine. There is no such seasoning as cooking wine in this era, so she can only use rice wine for seasoning. Of course I bought the most common rice wine from the market, which was cheaper. Although wine is rough, it is not used for drinking. It has the same effect as seasoning for cooking and removing fishy smell. After that, heat the fire, and when the water boils, squeeze out the blood foam from the chicken pieces. Then take out the chicken pieces and put them in a basin first. Then clean the pot, put it back into the pot, add the blanched chicken pieces, and add all the seasonings, rice wine, soybean soy sauce, red dates, and other things. I have to say that in this era, people use soybeans to make soy sauce, and ordinary people like to add some soy sauce when cooking. Add shiitake mushrooms and pour water to cover the chicken pieces. There is no doubt that Zhang Ziluo also added spiritual spring water to the water. The soup stewed in this way is fresh, delicious, and nutritious. Mrs. Kui looked at it in a daze. It turns out that there are so many things to make a chicken stew. Previously, when Mrs. Kui stewed anything or made soup, she would only add a little salt. "I don't even know what blanch is for." "Ziluo, is this enough to light the fire?" Zhang Ziluo nodded and said, "Mom, first bring it to a boil over high heat, then turn to low heat and simmer. This way the flavor will come out." Mrs. Kui nodded and said, "Just use high heat to pull the fan. If you turn it to low heat, you don't need a bellows. Turn on the bellows to burn firewood, and the flame on the stove burns very brightly, which is a big fire. Without the bellows, the flame is much smaller. Since the introduction of the bellows, it has become much easier to control the flame." In the past, Zhang Ziluo said that she could only use an iron rod to pull the firewood at the stove to control the flames. After the fire was lit and the pot lid steamed up, Mrs. Kui really smelled the fragrance. A strong and fresh fragrance pours into the tip of the nose, which immediately arouses people's appetite. It smells so good. End of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 104. Chapter 104, Budgeting Carefully, Third Update. Mrs. Kui couldn't help but swallow as she burned the firewood. Zhang Ziluo took out the dried Sichuan peppercorns she bought today, put them in a stone mortar for pounding garlic, and began to pound them into powder. When making kuakui with mushroom and meat filling tomorrow, adjust the meat filling and add ground Sichuan peppercorns. As if thinking of something, Mrs. Kui asked, "Ziluo, what should we eat as staple food?" Zhang Ziluo thought for a moment and said, "Mom, didn't we make cornmeal steamed buns last night? You can eat them with the cornmeal steamed buns." Steamed a pot of cornmeal buns last night, which can be eaten for several days. Even if their family conditions are better now, they still can't bear to eat white flour steamed buns every day. It is usually mixed with cornmeal to make steamed buns. Just because the house hasn't been built yet. So whether you can budget wisely or budget wisely. Save a little bit and save a little bit. Don't build a house halfway through and run out of money. And since you have bought medicine for Kui Hejin and MRS Kui to recuperate their bodies, it is best not to stop halfway. A few consecutive courses of treatment can completely restore MRS Kui's damaged body. MRS Kui nodded and said, "You can really just have cornmeal buns. By the way, Zhiluo, are you pounding garlic? I can do it after a while, or let Hejin do it." Zhang Zhiluo said, "Mom, my husband will be tired after working in the school for a day. I can do this work, so I don't have to work hard for my husband." MRS Kui was at a loss for words to refute when she heard this. She has never seen someone who cares so much for her husband. When she was the Duke's wife, she didn't feel so sorry for him. MRS Kui smiled and sighed, Hejin must have accumulated some virtue in her previous life, and now she has found such a good wife like you. I didn't feel sorry for his father that much back then, I just felt that he was a man and should pamper me more. Zhang Zhiluo's expression changed, her hand movements paused, her nose felt sore, and her heart ached. Maybe he was very hard in his last life. Yes, it must be very hard for him to protect her like that. In this life, she was reluctant to let him suffer at all. MRS Kui said, "Those are all guesses. After all, I feel relieved that you have been harmonious and beautiful in this life." She was happy and relieved to see her son and daughter-in-law doing well. Hens and wives just support each other and feel sorry for each other. Her deserted son felt as if he had some fireworks under the influence of Zhiluo. While he was talking, Kui Hejin had already come in carrying 2 buckets of water. He glanced at Zhang Zhiluo, as if he heard what he just said. A dim light flashed across his eyes, flickering, and his black eyes became darker and darker. Kui Hejin poured 2 buckets of water, and the water in the jar was full. He went to the yard again to chop firewood. Looking at his busy figure, Zhang Zhiluo's cheeks felt a little dazed, as if she saw another scene through him. After Zhang Zhiluo pounded the pepper into powder, MRS Kui smelled the breath and said, "Is this the smell of spices?" "Mom, this is ground Sichuan peppercorns. I've just kneaded the dough and made it into dough. When I wake up early tomorrow morning, I can make kyuakui. I plan to make kyuakui stuffed with mushrooms and meat, and these peppercorns are used as seasonings for the stuffing." MRS Kui was stunned. "Then you really don't do the leak box business and make pot helmets?" Although MRS Kui doesn't know what a pot helmet is at this time, if her daughter-in-law wants to make it, it must be a good thing. Zhang Zhiluo nodded and said, "Well, when it comes to making kyuakui, our noodles are different from others, and they are not pies. They taste unique, so we can easily stand out among a bunch of food stalls. There are not many people buying leak boxes now, so we won't do it for the time being." MRS Kui nodded and said, "Well, I don't know much about business matters, so I will just follow your arrangements. I'll get up early tomorrow morning and make pot helmets with you. Well, after we turn back to use the plum blossoms to make umbashi, we can use the umbashi to make kyuakui, and the taste will be more unique. I visited the market before, and there was no umbashi here at all. And we can also make pickled pork with pickled vegetables and eat it ourselves." Thinking of this, Zhang Zhiluo had a smile on her face. In this way, MRS Kui was talking to Zhang Zhiluo, and the two of them discussed setting up a stall tomorrow. Time passed little by little. The fragrance in the house is getting stronger and stronger. This fragrance is too fragrant. MRS Kui has had a banquet in the village before and smelled the smell of stewed chicken, but it was not so fragrant. Next to Niu's house. Although Kui's family and Niu's house are separated by an abandoned open space, the fragrance is too strong and can easily spread to Niu's house. Especially at this time, Shan Mao was still playing in the yard. He smelled the fragrance and couldn't stand it anymore. "Mom, it smells so good, I want to eat meat." When it was time to eat, 7-year-old Shan Mao was already hungry. His mother hadn't cooked the rice yet. He smelled the aroma and felt that it must be meat that was so fragrant. "Yesterday you asked for candied horse. Didn't I just buy it for you? What kind of meat should I eat? Meat can only be eaten during the Chinese New Year." Shan Mao was so greedy that he couldn't bear the fragrance. "Woohoo, I want to eat meat, eat meat." Ms. Niu usually loves her son. The men in her family are very strong and capable of working. She also divided the family with her brothers below and collected enough food for her family. So occasionally she would buy her son a piece of candy, some peanuts, and other things to eat. But this kind of thing only costs a penny, and it is useful for coaxing children. But eating meat cannot be spent with just 2 pennies. It cost 20 cents to cut a pound of meat, and Mr. Niu was reluctant to buy it. Those are things that can only be eaten during the Chinese New Year. "Why are you crying? If you cry again, your father will come back and beat you." Lu Kang, the man of the Niu family, was very strong and worked hard, so he also went to the back of the village to help build a house. Mr. Niu was almost overjoyed to receive 10 cents home every day for the past 3 days. This period is the slack time for farmers. There is not much work on weekdays. If you are idle at home, it is idle. Going out to work for 10 cents a day naturally makes people happy. Just thinking about the Kui family's conditions getting better, Niu felt a little puzzled. She knows best what life the Kui family had lived before. Is it possible that Zhang Zhiluo came here with her dowry money? Or maybe her life suddenly becomes better and she still has money to buy a homestead and build a house. Li Zheng is talking about doing business. What kind of business can make so much money? If business is so easy, everyone will go into business. It's not like the people in the village are not smart enough to make some food and set up a stall, but it's not that easy to sell it. Things that cannot be sold are wasted, and the white flour used is also wasted. Besides, they may not be able to sell the eggs just by setting up a stall at the market. So as time went by, everyone stopped thinking and took good care of the land. Once the land was planted, more food could be produced, and there was no need to worry about other things. Mr. Niu finally calmed down Shan Mao and stopped him from making trouble. But Shan Mao shed tears as he smelled the stronger fragrance, his stomach growled, and he became even more hungry. Of course Mr. Niu also smelled the fragrance, and his mouth watered. "Really, I don't know what to make, but the fragrance is so delicious every day. I also smelled the fragrance last night. When I saw Kui in the afternoon, I asked about the cornmeal buns they made last night. Why do people make cornmeal steamed buns so delicious?" While Niu kept swallowing, Zhang Zhiluo knocked on the door with a small bowl of mushroom and chicken nuggets in her hand. Niu swallowed his saliva and shouted, "Who is it?" End of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Candy. Chapter 105. Chapter 105, Will Her People, 4th update. After the mushroom stew and chicken were cooked, Zhang Zhiluo thought it was time for her to come. It was raining that day and Ms. Kui was not at home. It was Kui Hejin who went to Niu in the rain to borrow brown sugar. Niu also carefully wrapped 2 straw ash linen mats in oil paper and gave them to her. Very clean and easy to use. This era is different from the technological era. Most farmers sew them out of linen stuffed with plant ash. Those in good condition use cotton cloth. Niu's carefulness also solved her urgent need. Although Kui Hejin went to the school the next day to buy a few more pieces of brown sugar and returned it, Zhang Zhiluo thought Niu was good. Kui Hejin took care of her so carefully and did not let her touch the water. He also said that these were the details of Niu's instructions. So Zhang Zhiluo thought for a while, scooped out a bowl of soup, put a few chicken nuggets, some mushrooms, and a lot of soup in it. Aunt Niu, it's me. Niu. She recognized Zhang Ziluo's voice as soon as she heard it. She walked around the welcoming wall and walked to the door. When she saw Zhang Ziluo, she was stunned. Ziluo, what's the matter? Zhang Ziluo opened the basket in her hand and took out the bowl of mushroom and chicken soup. Aunt Niu, my husband came to borrow something on a rainy day, but he didn't thank you properly. I happened to catch a pheasant at the foot of the mountain in the afternoon, stewed some chicken soup, and brought a bowl over. Zhang Ziluo was so polite, but Niu felt embarrassed. You are too polite. I didn't do anything. It's a normal thing for our village neighbors to help each other. You see, you still remember it? Take the things back and eat them at home. Dinner is cooked at home. Although Ms. Niu wanted it in her heart, she knew she shouldn't ask for it. Life must be tight for everyone in the village. This bowl of chicken soup is made of chicken nuggets and mushrooms, but they are both good things, and the Kui family may not be able to eat enough. Besides, she is a bit cheeky and likes to talk about other people's affairs, but she doesn't like to take advantage of others. Zhang Ziluo smiled and insisted, Aunt Niu, just take it. There aren't many things, and that's our intention. Besides, I may have to trouble Aunt Niu if anything happens in the future. If you don't take it, we'll be embarrassed. When Zhang Ziluo said this, Niu thought of her son and stopped being pretentious. Then I won't be polite. If you have anything to do in the future, just let me know. We are so close, and we will definitely help if we can. Niu people are also cheerful people. These words are also true. Zhang Ziluo smiled and said, Aunt Niu, too. If you need help with anything at home, please let us know. The people in the village are enthusiastic and sincere, and Zhang Ziluo is also willing to express her kindness. Niu looked at Zhang Ziluo and thought it was really good. Ever since Zhang Ziluo rescued Mrs. Zhao last time, people in the village have a good impression of her. No longer believe some of the previous rumors. The rumors were not good to hear before. It is said that the eldest daughter of the Zhang family is a bit stupid, and because the Zhang family saved Ms. Kui, they used various means to force Mr. Kui to marry her. There are all kinds of rumors anyway. But after actually talking to Zhang Ziluo, Niu felt that she was really a good girl. Mr. Niu has a good impression of her and is willing to make more friends and travel around more. Niu seemed to remember something and said, it rained a lot that day. Your husband didn't even have an umbrella. He knocked on the door and borrowed some brown sugar. His face turned red and he was very embarrassed. I asked him some details, and he listened patiently in the rain, which shows that he is a caring person. Some men don't look cold, as long as they love you and know how cold and hot they are. Don't listen to what outsiders say, just live your life behind closed doors and feel good about yourself. Mr. Niu couldn't help but chatter a few words, and spoke to Zhang Ziluo in the tone of someone who had experienced it. Zhang Ziluo thanked her with a smile. Mr. Niu poured out the things and gave Zhang Ziluo 2 salted duck eggs. Zhang Ziluo took the bowl and returned home. After returning, Ms. Kui asked, did you give me the things? Well, I gave it. Your Aunt Niu, sometimes she is not pleasant to talk about, but she is not evil-minded and she is also enthusiastic and cheerful. Zhang Ziluo nodded. Ms. Kui scooped out the stewed chicken with mushrooms from the pot and filled it into a large basin. It smells delicious. This chicken soup must be delicious. Kui Hejin also took out the warmed cornmeal buns. Zhang Ziluo looked at his cold figure and couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth when she thought of what Niu said. He is really a person who is cold on the outside and hot on the inside. The family sat at the dining table to eat. Ms. Kui smelled the aroma and couldn't help but eat it. She took a spoonful of soup, put it to her lips, blew on it, and drank it into her mouth. Ms. Kui exclaimed, this soup is really delicious. It's very different from the chicken soup I've had before. The bowl of chicken stewed with mushrooms that your mother gave you the day you came home was delicious, but today's chicken soup is the most delicious. Zhang's Hiluo explained with a smile. That day, my parents had limited seasonings at home, so the taste was average. But today we have all the seasonings, so the taste will be more authentic. Mrs. Kui sighed with emotion. I never knew that these things that can be used as spices can actually be seasoned. I guess no one else would have thought of it. But this seasoning is very expensive. Happily, I only use a little every time I cook. Zhang Ziluo couldn't help but look at Kui Hejin, not knowing what he thought of the taste. She hopes he likes to eat too. Kui Hejin first scooped a bowl of chicken soup for Zhang Ziluo. It's a little hot, drink it slowly. Zhang Ziluo looked at Kui Hejin and said, you drink too. Kui Hejin met Zhang Ziluo's eyes, and there was a faint soft light in her eyes. Okay. Kui Hejin took a spoonful and put it into his mouth and took a bite. Zhang Ziluo's eyes became bright, and she blinked her big eyes, as if she was asking him how he tasted. Without Zhang Ziluo opening her mouth, Kui Hejin understood the meaning of her eyes and said softly, well, it tastes good. Zhang Ziluo breathed a sigh of relief and said, as long as it tastes good, you can eat more and drink more soup. This soup is very nourishing, and Zhang Ziluo feels that drinking Kui Hejin is also good for the body. Kui Hejin said in a gentle and good-natured voice, okay. The family is enjoying themselves while eating delicious food. Niu's family. Niu's son Shan Mao looked at the contents in the bowl, his eyes widened. Mom, is this really what Aunt Zhang gave you? Mr. Niu looked at his son funny and said, this can still be fake. Now there is meat to eat, so don't make trouble. Shan Mao jumped happily and followed Mr. Niu into the house. Mom, this is too fragrant. It's the same chicken soup, but it's different from what we drank before. It tastes different and looks different. He still remembered that during the Chinese New Year last year, his family killed a chicken and made soup. The taste and color were different. This is so thick and smells so fragrant. Niushi reacted immediately and said, it's true, it seems that Zhang Ziluo is really good at cooking. No wonder the cornmeal buns made last night were more delicious than those made by others. But for someone to send such a good thing, it shows that they are kind and sincere. Then Mr. Kui has married a good wife. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Space Doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Candy. Chapter 106. Chapter 106, Throbbing. Please vote for the 5th update. Niu looked at the several pieces of chicken and mushrooms in the bowl, and was very moved. I think I need to make good friends with the Kui family later on. Shan Mao is still young and doesn't care what his mother says. All he thinks about is food. The scent is enough to make your mouth water. Mom, let me taste the soup. Mrs. Niu came back to his senses and looked down at his son's greedy look. He was sad but also funny and said, look at how greedy you are, drink some soup first, and then eat later when your father comes back. Daddy works hard outside every day, so he needs to eat something good, otherwise his body will not be able to bear it. Niu felt sorry for her own man. Every day, she would save whatever delicious food she had and let her man eat it. The family relies on the food produced by her husband's work and farming. Shan Mao said, I know, we will wait for Dad to come back and have dinner together. Although Mrs. Niu loves her son, she also knows that the head of the household must eat more if he does physical work, otherwise his body will not be able to bear it. If the head of the household is good, then his family can have food to eat. If the head of the house collapses, they will drink from the northwest wind. These days, people in the village depend on the men in their families for their livelihood. They can contribute to cultivating the fields, but they still don't have enough strength to plow the fields. After a while, Lu Kang came back, chatting and laughing with the villagers. He entered the door and put down the shovel. Mr. Niu heard the noise and hurried out. Are you back? Well, I'm back here. Here are 10 cents for today. Speaking, Lu Kang carefully took out 10 cents from his pocket and gave it to Niu. Niu took the copper coins and couldn't help but count them. Lu Kang smiled and said, the copper coins sent by Sister Kui were handed over to Li Zheng. After the work was done, Li Zheng counted them out and gave them to us in front of us. How could there be any mistake? Niu shook his head and said, you don't understand the joy of counting money. I will be happy no matter how many times I count these 10 copper coins. I've been working for 3 days, which is 30 cents. I can still get it if I work for a few more days. Niu was very excited when he thought that he suddenly had dozens of pennies in his hand. With these copper coins, the family's life will be better and they won't have to be so tight. Seeing his daughter-in-law happy, Lu Kang also felt happy. Thinking about the 10 cents of wages every day made him energetic in his work. Wash your hands and eat quickly, I'm telling you, there's chicken with mushrooms tonight. This is given by the Kui family. Lu Kang went to wash his hands. Hearing the words, his hands stopped for a moment. What? Given by the Kui family. Niu explained what was going on. Lu Kang said, I just said that the Kui family is very good and well informed. I ask you to help me more when you have nothing to do. Niu, she said, you don't have to tell me, I don't know. Shan Mao couldn't bear it any longer. Dad, eat quickly. Mom said she would wait until you come back to eat. Lu Kang said, my son is hungry, you can eat first. Niu, she shook his head and said, I'll wait for you. I won't miss that much time. It's Dad, let's eat together to make it taste good. Lu Kang looked at his wife and son, feeling an indescribable sense of satisfaction in his heart. After Mr. Niu took out the food from the pot, the family ate cabbage soup and mushroom and chicken with steamed buns. They thought it was extremely delicious. It's delicious just with the soup or with steamed buns. This soup is so delicious. Lu Kang has had chicken soup before, but it didn't taste like this. This chicken soup is fresh and flavorful. Mr. Niu gave his son some chicken to eat. After Shan Mao ate, he smiled so hard that his teeth reached behind his ears. Mom, it's delicious. Too delicious. After eating, Shan Mao smacked his lips a few times to taste the aftertaste of the chicken. Father and mother, you eat too. Mr. Niu asked Lu Kang to eat it, but Mr. Niu was reluctant to eat it himself. You eat? Lu Kang was reluctant to eat and asked Niu to eat, and Niu hurriedly put it into Lu Kang's bowl for Lu Kang to eat. The two of you stay close to each other for a while. Shan Mao is used to it. When eating a piece of meat at home, his parents have to give in to each other for a while. You can take better care of the family if you do hard work and get better. Mr. Niu said this, and Lu Kang ate a piece. After eating, he was shocked. I didn't expect chicken to be so delicious. I have eaten chicken before, stewed in a clear soup with some salt, and thought it was delicious. I never thought that chicken could be so delicious. Lu Kang was stunned. Looking at the reactions of her family, Ms. Niu wondered if she could ask Zhang Ziluo later how to make chicken so delicious. However, I also thought that cooking is a secret recipe of each family, so how can I ask casually? There were 6 pieces of chicken in the bowl. Niu Shi and Lu Kang ate 1 piece, but they were still reluctant to eat the remaining 4 pieces and left them for their son. Shan Mao looked at it and said, Mom and Dad, why don't you eat? Lu Kang smiled and said, Dad doesn't like chicken very much, so you should eat it. Niu Shi said, yes, we want to drink some cabbage soup. Shan Mao didn't suspect anything. There were some things that his parents didn't like to eat in the past. One day when Shan Mao grew up, he realized how hard his parents worked. It was not that they didn't like to eat, but because it was delicious, they were reluctant to eat and left it to him. It's just that I didn't understand it when I was young, so I believed it. Kui family. After dinner, Zhang's Hiluo began to process the pig's waste and braise the pig's waste. After finishing her work, she rested. Early the next morning, Zhang's Hiluo woke up early. At night I was thinking about making kuakui early in the morning, so I slept lightly and woke up automatically at dawn in the morning. Looking at Kui Hejin sleeping next to her, Zhang's Hiluo quietly prepared to get up. It's just that I'm used to taking care of Zhang's Hiluo in the past few days. As soon as she makes any movement, Kui Hejin also wakes up. Kui Hejin looked at her and asked instinctively worriedly, "What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere, or are you hungry?" Zhang's Hiluo's heart palpitated slightly when she met Kui Hejin's twinkling and quiet eyes. "Did it wake you up?" "No, what's wrong with you?" She blinked her eyes and explained softly, "I woke up and wanted to get up." "You can sleep a little longer." Kui Hejin looked at Zhang's Hiluo's high energy and didn't look like she hadn't had a good rest, so she felt relieved. "Well, I'll get up too." Zhang's Hiluo asked, "Why don't you sleep more?" Then both men got up. Kui Hejin gave Zhang's Hiluo some warm water. "You wash yourself with warm water." Zhang's Hiluo blinked her big eyes, looked at him softly and said, "I'm fine now, there's no need to use warm water." She is really not that squeamish. It's still a bit cold in the morning, so wash your hands with warm water for the next 2 days. Zhang's Hiluo saw Kui Hejin's cold expression and knew that she couldn't defeat him. "You can only wash your face with warm water," as he said. After washing, Kui Hejin helped pour out the water in the basin without Zhang's Hiluo having to do anything. It seems to be just a habit these days. Zhang's Hiluo is actually not used to being taken care of like this. Feeling like I'm a bit pretentious. She took out the meat she bought yesterday and prepared to chop it into kuakui's mushroom and fresh meat stuffing. Kui Hejin just finished washing up and came to the side and said, "I'll do it." Zhang's Hiluo was stunned. She deeply suspected that Kui Hejin got up with her just to help her work. Zhang's Hiluo didn't know that it was the fact that she was weak, painful, and sweating that morning that made Kui Hejin still have lingering fears, worrying that she would be uncomfortable. End of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 107. Zhang's Hiluo raised her head and looked deeply at Kui Hejin. Even though he had no memory of his previous life at this time, he was still instinctively treating her well. He is still the same cold and pure person, but at this moment, there seems to be a dark whirlpool in his eyes, with the power to swallow people's hearts. Zhang's Hiluo's mind seemed to be swallowed up by Kui Hejin's eyes. Her eyelashes trembled, she quickly avoided looking and said softly, "I want to do something. I get anxious if I don't do anything." As he said that, Zhang's Hiluo looked up at him, her eyes were like autumn water, with a watery light, as if she was coquettish with him. Kui Hejin sighed helplessly, "When you are tired, take a rest, or tell me that I will do it, you know." Zhang's Hiluo nodded obediently, "Yeah." Zhang's Hiluo knew that Kui Hejin actually had the best temper, and as long as she looked obedient, he would be soft-hearted. "Then go read a book." Zhang's Hiluo knew that he had to help the students read articles and he also had to be busy with a lot of things. Kui Hejin did not insist anymore, but returned to the house. Zhang's Hiluo started chopping meat and vegetables. "I prepared all the meat, vegetable, and seasonings in advance last night, so I just have to get up early and get busy." Zhang's Hiluo tried to keep her voice as low as possible for fear of disturbing Mrs. Kui. Mrs. Kui used to get up early. After washing, she started to help Zhang's Hiluo. Mrs. Kui went to see that the noodles in the basin were ready. Mrs. Kui took it out and started kneading the dough. "Hiluo, after kneading it, can you cut it into pieces and roll it out?" Mrs. Kui and Zhang's Hiluo had a tacit understanding before when they made chive boxes. Now she kneads dough and rolls dough very quickly. But she could feel that the texture of this noodle was different from the one she used to make leek box noodles. I don't know what Ziluo added when she made the dough last night. Zhang Ziluo said, Mom, break the dough into small pieces, apply a layer of oil on the surface, and let it rest for 2/4 of an hour. After the noodles are almost ready, she can chop the fillings and adjust the taste. If it's the size of dough, it's this size. Zhang Ziluo grabbed one and showed it to Mrs. Kui. In this way, Mrs. Kui has an idea. If it's made with meat filling and greased with oil, wouldn't it be more expensive? Staying with Zhang Ziluo, Mrs. Kui also knew what the cost meant. We'll also use this word. Zhang Ziluo said, let's sell this for 5 cents each. Mrs. Kui was stunned. She stopped kneading the dough with her hands and said hesitantly, is this price more expensive? Will anyone buy it? Those who sell pies in town only cost 4 cents if they add meat, and 2 cents if they add vegetable fillings. The price is cheap and cost-effective, and more people will buy it. But those pies have thin crusts and a lot of vegetable fillings, but very little meat fillings. Even though it smells like meat, it's not all meat. But if it's a penny cheaper, more people will buy it. Zhang Ziluo used to run a leek box business, and she also has a certain understanding of the market and the consumption power of people in the town. 5 cents, she thinks everyone can accept it. At the shop that sells steamed buns, meat buns cost 5 cents, and there are many people buying them. Besides, some people used to buy 4 or 5 chai boxes at once. With their spending power, they can naturally afford it. It's just that those people are picky about things and their tastes. As long as the goods are good, they are willing to spend an extra penny or two to buy them. Especially children from some well-off families in the town are picky about eating. Several times, some ladies and aunties started croaking while waiting in line, saying that their children were picky eaters and didn't know how to eat well, and they didn't know what to do. She felt that it was not because the child was picky about food, but because the food did not taste good. If the food is delicious, you should be able to eat more. Because it's stuffed with meat, it's naturally more expensive. Besides, the kiwakui we make is not sold in town. Many people like it because it tastes delicious and fresh, and they often come to buy it. Besides, the meat stuffed buns cost 5 cents each, so it's normal for us to set this price. Zhang Ziluo has confidence in kiwakui. Mrs. Kui was a little worried and said, what if this is imitated? They were very confident in leeks before, because others didn't know leeks and couldn't make anything stuffed with leeks. But later I discovered that those people could make all kinds of pies at low prices and do the same business. It's just that no matter what the stall sells, everyone will know whether it tastes good or not after trying it once. The same pie, if someone makes it delicious, there will be more people in front of the stall. If someone's food is not delicious, there won't be many people buying it at the stall. It only takes a few days to eliminate several pie stalls. Mrs. Kui understands that the key is that the food is delicious. Well, that's the price. Zhang Ziluo was afraid that Mrs. Kui would be worried, so she gave her reassurance and said, Mom, no one can imitate this kiwakui at first and we don't know how to make it. The taste is different. The dough I need is different from normal dough. There is water in it, the ratio of oil to salt. Even if someone comes out later and robs kiwakui's business, Mother, don't worry, then we can make kiwakui with dried plums and vegetables no one in the town should know about. Megan. I'm going to make tempeh later, and we can also make chili con carne. Zhang Ziluo is not afraid of being imitated, as long as she is not surpassed. Because she has lived in modern times and likes to study food in her spare time, she has many business ideas in her mind. Hearing what Zhang Ziluo said, Mrs. Kui was completely relieved. Speaking of black bean sauce, Zhang Ziluo will naturally not forget the soybeans she soaked yesterday afternoon. The soybeans have been soaked after making the kiwakui for a while. The soybeans can be cooked and fermented. When it's ready, we can make the chili meat sauce. It's just the right time for us to make the kyuakui. After steaming and drying the prunes for 3 times, we can make the kyuakui with the flavor of prunes. The cost of dried plum vegetables is low, but because it tastes delicious and is not available on the market, it can be priced at 4 cents. Anyway, snacks are not easy to sell if they are expensive, so it is better to make small profits but quick turnover. Mrs. Kui nodded. In fact, she didn't know how to do these things. She just listened to Zhiluo. Mrs. Kui really feels that she has worked hard for her daughter-in-law. However, looking at Zhang Zhiluo's eyebrows shining with joy, I was also a little curious. This child didn't seem tired at all, but seemed very energetic and motivated. In fact, for Zhang Zhiluo, making money from doing business is a very happy process. And here, I no longer have to obey the organization's arrangements and keep doing tasks like in the previous life. That kind of rhythm is the fastest, and the spirit is highly tense. Although the food and technology here are backward, the pace of life here is relaxed and slow. Walking around the countryside, watching some people in the village sitting and chatting, watching the children playing and running around, she couldn't help but relax, and it felt like her breathing could slow down. Very relaxing and comfortable. And everything we eat is purely natural, so you don't have to worry about using technological products or pesticides. Chicken and chicken soup are so delicious, you can eat anything with confidence. The most important thing is that this world has him. She will be in a good mood when he is by her side. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 108. Chapter 108 Focus, Second Update. In their last life, it was difficult for them to retire even if they were in high positions. In this life, even if they are in the countryside, they can live a stable and peaceful life. Even if it's a bit hard now, as long as you work hard, you can have enough food and clothing. She will work harder, earn more money, treat him a little bit better, and make up for the shortcomings in the previous life. Thinking of these, Zhang Zhiluo instantly became energetic. Chopping the stuffing is even faster. Chop chop chop. The chopping action on the cutting board has become more rhythmic. Mrs. Kui was still awake for 2/4 of an hour after looking at the dough. She said in a leisurely manner, "Zhiluo, let me start the fire and cook the soybeans." Zhang Zhiluo nodded and said, "Okay, but mom, you put the soybeans in the pot and add a little salt to the water used to cook the beans." Mrs. Kui nodded, added some salt as Zhang Zhiluo said, and then went to the yard to get firewood to cook the soybeans. Zhang Zhiluo chopped the meat and vegetables, put them in a basin, and started to mix the stuffing. After mixing the stuffing, Mrs. Kui has already boiled the pot. Mrs. Kui had to sigh again. People in the village just don't know how useful the bellows is. You see, it's impossible to boil the pot at this time on weekdays, and it takes a while to burn firewood, but with the bellows, the wind blows whispering, the pot will soon boil. Zhang Zhiluo knew that the bellows was not a necessity for the villagers, but they were still reluctant to spend 100 yuan to buy 100 cents can indeed buy a lot of food. Perhaps when the conditions of the villagers improve and food and clothing are provided for, everyone will think about buying bellows. But my parents are good at making maltos and knitting straw sandals. During the market in Yangliu village, my parents would set up a stall to sell some things. Even if they earn a few dozen cents, they can subsidize the family's income and life will be better. Furthermore, Dad sold 6 or 7 bellows this time for 600 to 700 cents, which is pretty good, and life doesn't have to be so tight. If she can find brown bark and bamboo later, she can teach her father to make raincoats and oil paper umbrellas. With the skill of making oil paper umbrellas, my mother's family will continue to have income. An oil paper umbrella can be sold for 200 to 300 cash. These days, craftsmanship is valuable, and a family can be supported by just one craft. However, Most people in the village can do carpentry and masonry, and few have other crafts. This craft is usually passed down from ancestors. If you go to learn from others, there will be almost no one to teach you. Zhang Ziluo calmed down and said, "Mom, just put some firewood on the stove and let the firewood burn by itself. Let's make kyuakui first." It was getting late, the sky was getting dark, and the roosters in the village began to crow. Ification. Woof woof. The crowing of roosters is accompanied by the sound of dogs barking in the village, intertwining into a morning song. People in the village will get up and make breakfast one after another, from sunrise to sunset, day after day. Zhang Ziluo felt that the noise was very pyrotechnic. Mrs. Kui quickly washed her hands and helped Zhang Ziluo. Mrs. Kui began to roll out the dough. Seeing Mrs. Kui's habit of rolling it into a round shape, Zhang Ziluo said, "Mom, let me roll one out for you first." As she spoke, Zhang Ziluo rolled it into an oblong shape. She knew how to say it, but Mrs. Kui didn't understand it either. It was easier to understand if she looked at the real thing. "Okay, my mother can roll it." Mrs. Kui took the rolling stick and started working. Zhang Ziluo adds stuffing to it, then rolls it up from top to bottom, and then rolls it flat. In fact, it would be more delicious if there are black sesame seeds. But there are no black sesame growers in the village, so the cost of buying black sesame is a bit expensive. Zhang Ziluo thought about it and decided not to buy black sesame seeds. Anyway, black sesame seeds are not necessary for making kyuakui. Without black sesame, kyuakui would be just as delicious. After rolling it out, put it aside. After everything is done, sprinkle cornmeal on top and stack the pots and helmets in a clean basket so they won't stick together. This part is fried freshly in town. Let's fry some at home first. Zhang Ziluo thought about frying some at home first and went to the market. If it got cold, she would heat it up a little. There are also some that are just rolled out and not fried, so they can be grilled on site. This saves some time and allows you to have breakfast at home. Just like that, Mrs. Kui lit the fire, and Zhang Ziluo put the oil on the pot helmet. When both sides are cooked, a crispy aroma will spread out. Zhang Ziluo heated up the chicken soup she had not finished last night. When it was time to eat, Zhang Ziluo came into the room and asked Kui Hejin to eat. Yesterday, during the school exam, the students all wrote articles, and Kui Hejin brought them back for correction. He is rigorous about learning and looks focused when correcting, seeming to forget everything around him. Zhang Ziluo looked at his expression and almost couldn't bear to disturb him. Kui Hejin seemed to feel something, and raised his eyes slightly. When he saw Zhang Ziluo, his quiet expression was tainted with a soft atmosphere. "What's wrong?" Zhang Ziluo said, "Breakfast is ready, let's go out and have breakfast first." "Good." Kui Hejin put the articles together, then washed his hands and had a meal. Zhang Ziluo took a bite of the pot helmet, which was crispy and sweet, with the taste of mushroom meat, and she nodded secretly in her heart. Mrs. Kui had never eaten such delicious food when she was in the capital before. Mrs. Kui's smile now overflowed from her eyes, and she said happily, "Even if this pot helmet is sold in the capital, it will be very popular. I've never had such delicious food in Beijing before." Zhang Ziluo knows that this is probably because the food culture is relatively backward. Perhaps this is because the condiments are not as rich and varied as in modern times. When Zhang Ziluo looked at Kui Hejin understood her eyes and nodded, "It tastes very good." "That's good, I've made a lot, please eat more." Zhang Ziluo found that Kui Hejin always looked thin no matter how he ate. But when she gave him acupuncture before, she knew that he was in excellent shape. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but blush, lowered her head and ate quietly. After eating 2 kyuakui and drinking a bowl of chicken soup, Zhang Ziluo felt her stomach was warm and comfortable. After she was full, she opened the lid of the pot and looked at the soybeans. The soybeans are cooked and can be taken out for fermentation. Mrs. Kui said, pour out the soybean water. Zhang Ziluo said, these are also useful. Mrs. Kui helped Zhang Ziluo fish out the soybeans and put them on a clean dustpan to ferment. Then put away the water used to cook the beans. After everything was done, they went to the town, first delivered the braised meat to Lin Zuzu's meat stall, and then went to the market. Most people in the market are also familiar with Mrs. Kui and Zhang Ziluo. Seeing them coming, they all greeted them warmly. Oh, Sister Kui, Ziluo, you haven't been here for several days, I thought you wouldn't set up a stall anymore. Mrs. Kui responded with a smile, how can you not? I have something to do at home, so I won't delay it. I still rely on this little business to get by. If you had told us earlier, we could have helped you get a seat, but now it's gone. Mrs. Kui knew that everyone was telling the truth, and said gratefully, thank you, Sister Lin, in advance. We don't know when we will finish our work and set up a stall. It's a good idea to occupy the space all the time. It's okay if it is occupied. We just on the edge. Mrs. Kui and Zhang Ziluo greeted everyone one by one. They pushed a small food cart and walked through the market with some prepared pot helmets. Some people could smell the aroma directly on the tip of their noses. Oh, what delicious food did you make, why does it smell so good? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Space Doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Candy. Chapter 109. Chapter 109 Marketing, Third Update. Mrs. Kui smiled and explained, it's Kiwakui. Kiwakui, what is that? I've never heard of it. Yes, what is Kiwakui? No, you are no longer in the leak box business. Someone came over 2 days ago to inquire about buying a leak box. In everyone's eyes, Mrs. Kui and Zhang Ziluo were doing pretty good business selling chive boxes. At least the stall is not deserted. Some people set up stalls to sell something, and there might only be a dozen or so people asking to buy something in the morning. Some people may not be able to sell anything all morning. But when doing business, there are times when it is deserted and times when it is lively. Zhang Ziluo smiled and said, Aunt Wang, Aunt Li, we are no longer in the leak box business. From today on, we will sell pot helmets. I will cut some small pieces and everyone is welcome to taste them for free. When everyone heard this, smiles appeared on their faces. The reason why everyone is so enthusiastic about Mrs. Kui and Zhang Ziluo is because everyone thinks that the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law are good people and they speak cheerfully and enthusiastically. Whenever someone I don't know has something to do, they will help. The first time Ding Zhuang's family was robbed of their money bag, Mrs. Zhang recovered it. Some people fell to the ground and almost lost their lives before, but Miss Zhang saved them all with her medical skills. The old lady running the stall in the corner suddenly fainted, and it was Miss Zhang who gave her a few injections. You guys can't help but admire me. They are also willing to make friends with them. Even if Mrs. Kui and Zhang Ziluo's stalls are doing well, no one will be jealous. However, there are many nearby farmers at the market, who come to the market to sell some eggs, duck eggs, vegetables, chickens, ducks and other agricultural products. Some of them are simple-minded and don't know much about talking. They just sit there when setting up stalls. When someone comes over and asks about the price, they will answer a few words. Zhang Ziluo and Mrs. Kui found a place in the corner to put down the small dining cart. A lady selling duck eggs next to her was afraid that they would not have enough space, so she took the initiative to move to the side. Anyway, there is a basket in front of her with a basket of duck eggs, so it doesn't take up any space. Zhang Ziluo said gratefully, "Thank you so much, ma'am." The aunt rubbed her hands in embarrassment, No. You're welcome. She didn't do anything. After setting up the stall and putting away everything, Zhang Ziluo took out 2 kyuakui and cut them into small pieces, put them on a plate and inserted them with wooden skewers so that everyone could hold them and taste them. After setting up the stall, Zhang Ziluo shouted loudly, "We are selling kyuakui, fresh meat kyuakui, fragrant and crispy kyuakui. You can taste it for free." Mrs. Kui also shouted a few times. Zhang Ziluo's voice is clear and penetrating in the bustling market. Soon some people heard it and everyone looked over. Someone recognized it and said, "Oh, isn't that Mrs. Jiang's stall?" "That's right, I came here 2 days ago to buy a leek box. I didn't see them, so I thought they wouldn't set up a stall. Is this a different thing? What is kyuakui, is it edible?" Everyone has never heard of kyuakui, thinking that the chai box made by Mrs. Jiang is so delicious, other things should also taste good. Besides, there is a free tasting, so they can try it first to see how it tastes. There were also people who didn't recognize Zhang Ziluo and the others. Seeing many people approaching them, they couldn't help but join in the fun and follow them. For a time, there were more people in front of Zhang Ziluo's stall. Some people familiar with Zhang Ziluo's business style looked at the pile of small pieces on the plate in front of them and said, "Miss Zhang, can you taste this for free? One look at my aunt and I know that you have bought my chai box before." "No, my children like to eat chai boxes. I have bought them many times. I thought you would stop setting up a stall." "It's a stall, just selling pot helmets." "Then why don't you make a leek box? You can't even buy one." Zhang Ziluo smiled and said, "There are not many people buying chai boxes now. It is a small business and there are not many chai boxes sold, so I can only change the food." When the aunt heard this, her expression changed. "I won't be able to eat the leek box after that. They often buy and eat this thing at first, but after eating it for a few days, they don't really want to eat it anymore. But after a few days, I felt like eating it again." They just thought that when they wanted to eat, they could just buy 2 and take them home to try. Just like eating steamed buns, if you want to eat them, you can buy them whenever you go. "Good guy, I won't sell it directly. The key point is that there is no one selling this thing nearby." Many people looked regretful when they heard this. "Ah, I won't be able to buy it anymore." "Are you not going to be able to eat this anymore?" They didn't think much of the items that were readily available. Suddenly they realized that they couldn't eat the chai boxes anymore, and everyone began to miss the taste of the chai boxes. Zhang Ziluo saw everyone's expressions in her eyes and knew that maybe she would sell the chai boxes once in a while, and her business would pick up. With this hunger sales model, more people will buy leek boxes. Zhang Ziluo said, "The ingredients we use are very scarce. We will cook it later when we have the ingredients. Sisters, aunts, and ladies, you have to take care of the business then. If people don't like eating leek boxes, we really don't want to make this, because it's quite troublesome to make." Zhang Ziluo said this, and many people who had eaten the leek box responded. Some people who came to join in the fun didn't know Zhang Ziluo and her mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. They were wondering what the leek box was and was it delicious. Just like that, Zhang Ziluo chatted with everyone and promoted pot helmets. In addition, there are small pieces that can be tasted for free, so everyone can taste it after just one bite. It's really meaty. This tastes very different from pie. Zhang Ziluo smiled and explained, "If it were really the same, we would also call it pie. This one is different, so we call it kyuakui. It's really delicious, madam. You and your mother-in-law are really good at cooking. What you cook is different from others." "That's right, things are still clean. Even though the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law are dressed very simply, in coarse linen clothes, which are a bit old after washing, they are still very clean and their fingers are clean, which makes people feel comfortable just looking at them. In fact, these are their better clothes. There are also clothes at home that have been patched for work." Zhang Ziluo has thought about buying clothes, but in this era there are very few ready-made clothes. Not only the size is not suitable, but the price is also expensive, so it is not cost-effective to buy ready-made clothes. Buying cloth is cheaper than ready-made clothes, but the cloth is also more expensive. A piece of the roughest and most common kudzu costs more than 200 yuan. In fact, Zhang Ziluo felt that Gemma was very uncomfortable to wear. She actually wanted to buy cotton cloth for her family. A piece of cotton cloth with the most common patterns cost 1 tael of silver. When she was selling leek boxes, one day after closing the stall, Zhang Ziluo wanted to take Mrs. Kui to buy cloth to make clothes. However, Mrs. Kui is not very good at making clothes. Zhang Ziluo only thinks about making more money for the time being and has no time to make clothes. Mrs. Kui only said that she still had clothes to wear and would not buy them yet, so the matter of buying cloth to make clothes could only be put on hold for the time being. End of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 110. Zhang Ziluo thought that by dressing like this for the time being, everyone would see that they were wearing ordinary clothes, so they might have sympathy and be willing to take more care of their business. When I have time, I still need to buy cloth to make clothes. It is best to buy cotton cloth. There are several kinds of linen cloth, and the prices are also different. They are now wearing burlap. Village people generally wear patched kudzu to work, because it is relatively cheap and there is no need to worry about it getting torn or stained. Everyone was talking and asking questions, while Zhang Ziluo was selling pot helmets. How much does a pot helmet cost? Zhang Ziluo smiled and said, 5 cents each. What, 5 cents? Such a thin cake only costs 5 cents, isn't it a bit expensive? That's right, you only sold leek boxes for 3 cents each before. When everyone heard that 5 cents was expensive, they instinctively thought it was expensive. Some people originally planned to buy it, but hesitated for a moment, thinking that it was so expensive that they should not buy it. But the food is really delicious. Zhang Ziluo is not upset. She set the price before coming and guessed how everyone would react. I make it with meat fillings, and the process of making kyuakui is complicated, which is different from making pies. It costs a lot and takes a lot of time to make. It is naturally more expensive than plain stuffing. Besides, don't we all buy meat-filled buns for 5 cents each? It doesn't matter. If you think it tastes good, just buy it. If it doesn't taste good, don't force me to buy it. But maybe in a few days, we won't set up a stall to make kyuakui. Everyone was stunned when they heard Zhang Ziluo's words. While other people are doing business, they wish they could set up a stall here all day long. Is the Zhang family so willful in setting up a stall? In fact, what Zhang Ziluo said is true. In a few days, if the chili con carne business is good, she may not set up a stall to sell snacks. Because setting up a stall selling snacks every day is really busy. There is no need to make chili con carne. She can make it at home and sell it in the town, or sell it to merchants and ship dealers, and she can do things at home. There is no need to get up early every day and run to town with Mrs. Kui. Spring is better. If it were summer and the weather was so hot and she was still setting up a stall in the town, she probably wouldn't be able to stand the heat. In this era, there are no fans, air conditioners, or popsicles, so it is very easy to suffer from heat stroke. Why don't you set up a stall to sell pot helmets? That's right, this stuff tastes good. If it's cheap, we'll buy it. Zhang Ziluo patiently replied, Auntie, it's really not cheap. I put a lot of meat in it, and everyone can eat it. And the reason why it's so crispy is because I added a lot of oil. You will know when you think about it. This cost a lot. We set up a stall to make kyuakui as a small business. If the price is lowered, we really won't be able to do this business. Zhang Ziluo explained while smiling. Talking is gentle, and even if everyone wants to bargain, Zhang Yanluo also explained in harmony. Everyone saw that she had such a good temper and spoke very gently. Some people thought that they might as well buy a few and give them to their families to try. Don't look back and you won't have a pot helmet anymore. They had never seen this kind of food before. Don't say it, things are unique because they are so willful. If only someone sold Kiwakui at a cheaper price, these people would not buy it here. Just like that, one after another people bought one or two. Some people tasted it delicious and bought several at once. After selling for half a morning, Zhang Ziluo closed the stall. Mrs. Kui was stunned. Ziluo, why don't we set up a stall here? There are still some unsold. Zhang Ziluo shook her head and said, Mom, many people here are residents of the town. They don't. You can also go home and cook something. The leeks from the leek box used to have a unique taste. Everyone had a taste of it, and business was naturally good at the beginning. But for meat stuffing, everyone eats pies and steamed buns in the same way. Although kiwakui is delicious, the taste is a little different. Zhang Ziluo thought about it and decided to go to the dock. She explained in a low voice, Mom, let's go to the pier. Most of the people on the pier are people working in the town, and there are also some people who run boats. They can't cook and eat by themselves, they can only buy things to eat. As long as they taste the delicious kiwakui we make, they will buy it. Just like that, Zhang Ziluo and Mrs. Kui pushed the trolley to the dock. They passed by just in time for lunch. As soon as Zhang Ziluo and Mrs. Kui shouted, some passing merchants on the other side of the pier came over and said, free tasting, meat-stuffed pot helmets. It looks delicious. Zhang Ziluo and Mrs. Kui took out the kiwakui that had been fried at the market and continued to fry it. The aroma was emitted from the place. Some boatmen who run boats came over and asked, your kiwakui tastes really good, how much does it cost for one? Zhang Ziluo smiled and said, 5 cents each. Some people who have just got off the ship after being on the ship for 10 days and a half naturally want to eat something good. We have traveled all over the country to do business and have seen the market. Naturally, when we hear that 5 cents is expensive, we don't think it is expensive. Just buy 2 or 3 to eat at once. Some ship bosses simply bought dozens of them and had them brought back to the ship for their men to try. There are also people who have bought Zhang Ziluo brown sugar before and immediately recognized Zhang Ziluo. Oh, little lady, it's you. Auntie, do you recognize me? The woman smiled and said, that's not true. We usually go fishing and we bought brown sugar from you last time. Zhang Ziluo suddenly realized when she heard this, it turns out that my aunt has taken care of my business before. The woman said with a smile, oh, the little lady can talk. We want to thank you. I bought 10 pieces of brown sugar before and drank it every day. My health has indeed improved a lot. It really works. The most obvious change is that my legs no longer hurt. We have been on the boat all year round. The water is so close to us and the humidity is so great that our legs often hurt. Usually when it rains, my legs are very sore, but it rained a few days ago and my legs were fine. You said the brown sugar you made is so effective. I told my sister, but she still didn't believe it. Zhang Ziluo knew that Lingquan water was effective, but she didn't expect that it could be combined with sugar to dispel cold and dampness. Auntie, our brown sugar is different from other brown sugars because medicinal materials are added to it. It is good for your health. Then 2 cents each is really cheap for you. They all know how expensive medicinal materials are. Zhang Ziluo smiled and said, it's just a small business. The woman was grateful to Zhang Ziluo and bought 4 pot helmets at once. The little lady is kind-hearted, and the food she makes must be delicious. I'm just about to go home and have a taste with the boss and the 2 children. There are many people around here, and everyone is joining in the fun and watching. Hey, little lady, you are selling food. Do you still have your brown sugar? We still want to buy your brown sugar. Zhang Ziluo didn't expect to start a kiwakui business, so everyone asked her about brown sugar. Zhang Ziluo said helplessly and funny, We don't sell brown sugar anymore, we sell pot helmets. Pot helmets are just as delicious, fragrant, and crispy. Madam, will you buy them? While Zhang's Hiluo was doing business, the medicine boy from Xinglan Medical Center ran over and said, "Oh, Miss Zhang, you are here. I have found you."